Have you ever been struggling on a long training ride or during a race and thought to yourself, I could really do with saving some energy here? Well, today I'm going to be talking through how to save energy on the bike. Whoa, hang on, I'm not finished there. With an intro like that, you're going to think I'm talking about aerodynamic gains, expensive kit, wind tunnel testing and so on. But today I'm not going to be focusing on things like that. Instead, I'm going to be talking about skills and racecraft, things that can make you a more efficient rider and save you energy on the bike. Okay, you can do your thing now. Now, many of these points can actually be practiced both in training and in racing. I actually suggest doing just that, so you really do arrive ready and prepared come race day. This first point is one that we talk about a lot on race day, but don't always make quite enough time for, and I've certainly been guilty of this and been caught out by it in the past too. That is knowing the course. This is going to help us save energy by riding the course more efficiently, pacing the ride well, and generally just having less to think about. Let me explain. See, there are efficient ways to ride and inefficient ways to ride. You can ride efficiently by riding at nice constant power. You can ride inefficiently by having surges and drop-offs in your power. And for many of us, on race day, we get caught up in the moment. We surge on the hills, we try and chase people down and chase groups down, and that is just burning energy. Whereas if you know the course well and you pace it, you're obviously going to save yourself energy and may end up with a faster ride overall. And another common trap that many of us fall into is surging on the climbs. And quite often we do this without even realizing, just because we're simply used to having to push harder to go up hills, but too much and we could be wasting valuable energy. So there's a few things we can do to help limit that and try and preserve some of that energy. So one of which is actually monitoring our cadence. So trying not to change our cadence too much when we get onto hills. That means adjusting our cadence accordingly. Another is also monitoring our heart rate. If you are using heart rate, again, you want to keep that heart rate pretty constant and pretty similar, so no surges or spikes in your heart rate. And then our power, well, your power will actually naturally increase slightly on climbs for the same given effort, but you want to limit that to around 10% extra. So for instance, if you're aiming to ride at 250 watts, try and cap that around 275 watts for the climbs. And another obvious place that we can surge in intensity and effort is out of corners as we try to get ourselves back up to speed. And quite often, and quite annoyingly, we have slowed ourselves down more than we needed to. There's nothing worse than slowing right down for a corner and then someone else to come speeding past you around that corner because they know the corner isn't quite as tight as you thought it had been. Now, of course, there are some corners out there that you really do need to slow down for, and it's important you know where those are. For those corners, ideally you want to do all your braking or as much of your braking as possible before the corner or as you slightly go into it, and then you can carry your speed and momentum through and out of the corner without having to surge too much. Now, learning and knowing the course doesn't necessarily mean cycling the course several times and knowing it inside out. Obviously that is quite a luxury. It could simply be just driving the course once the day before, maybe cycling a couple of the tricky sections, or at worst, and I've done this numerous times before, is actually just popping on Google Street View and checking out some of those steep descents, sharp corners, or anything that is of note or is of worry to you, and that can make a huge difference. All right, now for some aero gains. And I know I said we wouldn't be delving down into aerodynamics today, but I've got a few quick, easy and simple things that can make a big difference and save you a ton of energy. Now, firstly, and quite simply, aerodynamics comes down to your bike and you, the rider. Now, headwinds, well, they're the nemesis for any cyclist and triathlete out there, and essentially amplify any aerodynamic inefficiencies. So it's really important we try and tuck down. And typically we refer to this as the shrug, as we essentially try to shrug our shoulders forward and as close together as we possibly can, meanwhile trying to bring our chest and our head as low and as close to the aero bars as we can too. Basically trying to make our frontal area as small as we possibly can. And don't worry if you don't have a time trial or triathlon bike, you can apply that same or similar methodology onto a road bike too. Finally though, in our whirlwind tour of basic aerodynamics, we also have towards the tail end of a bike leg, particularly in a triathlon, as we start to fatigue, our body starts to fall apart, both physically but also our position. And that means that we start to decrease in terms of aerodynamics and therefore actually expending more energy for the same speed. So it's really important, we want to focus on getting aerodynamic during that, but actually it can be incredibly hard as we're tired. So it's really important that during your training you do some specific aero tuck drills and some strength work to allow you to do that. I'm talking about eating and drinking for a specific purpose on a ride. And granted, it's not necessarily going to save you energy, but if done wrong, you could end up needing far more energy to complete the same ride. We've all been there where we've had a huge hunger knock whilst we're out on a ride, maybe not fueled enough, ended up searching for the remainder of the ride for the shortest route home while staring at the tarmac. No? Well, I certainly have. Well, whether it's training or racing, it's really important that you plan ahead, you think about the duration, the length of the ride you're planning on doing, and the intensity you plan to do that at, and taking the right and enough food for that ride. And then also make sure that you're eating and drinking consistently throughout that ride. Don't try and play catch up because it never works. And also, don't, in that final hour, decide you're close enough to home that there's no need to eat or drink, because that's where some of the biggest mistakes are made and also has a big knock-on effect with your recovery. Well, I hope all of that has been helpful for you today. A lot of it is trial and error, so do go out there and try it out, find out what works best for you, and let us know in the comment section below how you get on and any mistakes you've made. We all like hearing them. If you haven't done so already, head on over to our GTN social media channels, give them a follow, and also give us a subscribe down below if you're not doing so already.